Okay, this is your review guide for the upcoming World War II tests. If you have not looked at these three files here, you definitely want to take a look at them. These are sample tests from previous years. This is a blank copy. This one right here has answers. And then these are tests from academic level, and they possibly will help as well. Same deal, blank copy, and then a copy with answers. This file has documents that will probably appear on your test. And for the most part, what I'm going to do is skim through the exam and let you know what your responsibility is, especially if there's anything that is um, something that I just want to remind you about. Anyway, so the first item that I'm going to look at is going to be the card game simulation, which was one of the first things that we did to look at the start of World War II. We completed this particular exercise where you were given a series of cards and asked whether or not you would go to war based on the issue. So when you look at this slideshow here, we see the round. These are actually things that happened, and then the cost here. Keep in mind, I will reference this particular card game. So I'm done with that one. You will have the war crimes and crimes against humanity. So that one section is this slideshow right here. And you have the definition for war crime and crime against humanity. And I pretty much will be doing the same thing I did on this particular class. Well, I will give you a scenario. For example, Italy invades Ethiopia. Is that a war crime, crime against humanity, genocide, bystander, or just an act of war? You want to focus on the causes for World War II, the European as well as the American causes. I believe when you go back to this slideshow and you scroll down to the end, you have the United States, Japan relationship that deteriorates. Keep in mind, we want to focus on Poland being the actual cause for World War II from the German point of view. And you can take a look at this slideshow right here that's broken down by Japan's actions as well as Italy, and then finishing off with Germany. You will be asked to put these in the correct chronological order. So you want to make sure you complete that. We also have the difference between Vichy France and France. I know I've used these terms before, so let's do a quick search for Vichy France. And what do we get here? Let's put World War II, put Germany. Common name of French state headed by Marshal Philippe during World War II, authoritarian, xenophobic, and it kind of goes on. Was Vichy France allied with Germany? The French government of Vichy never joined the Axis power, never remained formally at war with Germany. Vichy France became a collaborationist regime. This is the key part right here, that they collaborated with the Nazis. So if we look at this particular map here of France, we see France looks like it's divided into two sections, German occupied and then the free zone here. Which is crucial because keep in mind, the more territory Germany acquires, the more people that Germany is going to have to target, because Germany has a whole list of people that they are looking to target for extermination. Let's not forget the isolationists during World War II. So we can just do a quick Google search here and get an idea what the isolationist attitude's about. Let's see. The WWII committee, we want to make sure we have an understanding of the WWII committee. That was a reference to World War I and the interwar period. The war industry boards is an issue that may or may not come up. We shall see in a later section here. So we have the outcome of World War II. For the outcome of World War II, what you want to do is go to the last day notes, which is this slideshow right here. And you want to take note pretty much what happens to Germany. A little bit is what happens to Japan with regard to the unconditional surrender, the window in the window, which is here. So some of these items will be on the test. For example, this one, you're going to want to know this here. Let's see, what else is going to be difficult? Nuremberg trials, this point right here. We don't necessarily need to know when Hitler committed suicide, but we definitely want to know that Germany is second, so they're first out, they're second, they're third. And then Stalingrad over here, not necessarily Russians push Germany's after Stalingrad, but that Stalingrad is one of the battles that's going to help bring Germany to the end. So here we see the German state of exit from the war. And then when we look at Japan, we see that the US wants the unconditional surrender, that we're having a debate about invading, the difference between the Yalta and the Potsdam Conference, as well as the letter that we looked at, the Potsdam Declaration, which would be different from the Potsdam Conference. So you can simply just gonna go back to your notes in class, this particular chart right here, having an understanding of those definitions. Let's see, what else do we have here? The definition of genocide will be on the test. And what you're going to be in for is like this will have A, B, C, D, and E. Then you're going to have to look at an event and determine which part of the definition of genocide is being, violated. Here we have a chart showing the difference between the United Nations Security Council as well as the General Assembly. And what you want to take note of here is the 5 nations here that have permanent veto power. That's crucial there as far as the outcome is concerned. Let's see, what else do I have? Executive Order 8734. Let's take a look at that. Executive Order 8734. Did I forget already what that is? All right, so here's what we got here. We have the Office of Price Administration. So this is actually looking at the issue of rationing. You want to think about guns versus butter. So let's take a look at the slideshow, Americans during World War II. In class, we looked at this. I will use this particular chart, and you're going to have to be able to identify what women, African American, Mexican, and homosexuals were going through. So we did this in class as well. Let's go down to kind of what I'm looking for here. So for this executive order, we're looking primarily at rationing. We see the guns versus butter chart. This will be on every test. I want to get a sense of what rationing was about, and there'll be a series of documents that you're going to have to be familiar with. So I can't really get into some of the specifics of the documents. Next part, we are looking at this assignment that was completed in class. Where is it? Can't find it. All right, let's see. It's got to be at the top. Let's move up here. Let's see. This assignment where you're asked to complete an IQ test and then make a decision about euthanasia, sterilization, and which of the 3 patients here would remain alive. You will have some Nazi laws that you are going to have to consider in your decision. So where do the Nazi laws come into play? That's a good question. Let's see. It's got to be this one here. Nazi medicine. Somewhere in here there's a law. There you go, right here. The law for the prevention of offspring with hereditary disease. You don't have to remember that. It's just that's the law that's going to be used. Again, we did that in class, so it's more about the application. There's going to be a speech from Robert Oppenheimer. Who is Robert Oppenheimer? Who was that guy? Well, I'm not going to really get into that too much, but he was the individual leading the Manhattan Project. And when you open up this particular file right here, it gives you some of that information right here. Actually, this file gives you the law right here, the text of the documents that I'll be using. And here we see the speech from Oppenheimer right there. So let's see. We have the battles PowerPoint. So the battles PowerPoint, I know I had that thing opened up before. Let's go up to battles. Where's the battle one? European, Pearl Harbor. All right, that's the battle. So in class, we looked at this particular image here. You want to take note of the battles in Europe as well as the ones in the Pacific. Take a look at the list here. We have Torch, Stalingrad, D-Day, Battle of the Bulge, Battle of Berlin, or you could access this slideshow here. I believe when you look at the back, you get into the war in the Pacific. If that's not helping out, you can go to battles to the end and kind of follow along with this particular slideshow. And the only battles that I will focus on are the battles that are primarily here: Operation Torch, Battle of the Bulge, as well as Operation Overlord, which was the combined effort for the squeeze. So you are expected to know these particular battles: Torch, Normandy, Battle of the Bulge, Berlin, and Stalingrad, as well as for the Pacific, where you want to know Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, Battle of Midway. What else do we have in here? The battles that are here: Guadalcanal, already mentioned that one. And you want to focus on what the outcomes for these battles would be. For example, at which point does the United States hoist the American flag? So that is a reference to this part, Iwo Jima. We see the flag here. Let's see, the concept of island hopping, going one island at a time. The Okinawa battle, the outcome, U.S. wins, or it looks like they're going to win. Kamikaze tactics are starting to be implemented. Let's go back to the domestic slideshow, which is this one. You're definitely going to want to know a little bit about what happens to Japanese Americans in the United States as they're dealing with the aftermath of Pearl Harbor. So that's looking at this particular information right here. We looked at some of this information in class where the Japanese were put into relocation camps. I also know that there is a slideshow. Well, no, this section right here, kind of give you a screencast as well as this order. I'm not going to ask you the specific order, but you probably want to focus on maybe like the first or second thing, and keep track of like at what point is it about the people doing something versus the government. For example, right here, executive order, that is very different from teachers forbidding Japanese Americans from participating during the pledge. This is a choice that someone is making. This is a decision the government is making. So this one is more along the lines of the intentionalist argument. So that's kind of where you want to focus with regard to that. I'll be asking you a series of questions using the domestic PowerPoint. And again, that is where the information for this thing comes in, and which was the reason why I asked you to create this particular chart. So I'll be asking you questions, which represents Mexican or homosexuals, and so on. We also have the definitions, the yearly definitions. If you have no idea what that's about, you can go down to yearly definitions, and the ones you're responsible for knowing this time around: crime against humanity, nationalism, power vacuum, as well as imperialism. So those are the ones that I probably, and I'm telling you now, I will focus on. You now have a series of questions about the simulation. So this was also a part of the quiz that's looking at this particular file right here, unless you completed the quiz already, which you probably should have, or the sample tests that have been provided online. Don't know why this isn't opening, but for the most part, what we're looking at are questions asking you about this section right here. We see the student names. These are the students from the class, as well as the negative, positive, or 0 points that are being accumulated. So you want to focus on the students being a social, those that are contributing, like this individual right here, Janet, seems to have 4+ points in comparison to this individual, Fen Fang, who's at a -2. So that's it for that particular section. Let's see. I'll be asking you some odd questions about the purity from the Roaring Twenties. The only difference is here I'll be asking you about Nazi ideology. You want to know what fascists believe, and for fascist belief, I just want to direct you to the reading Germans into Nazis from the Helped into Power, the reading that and documentary that we looked at. So the issue here that's being raised is that, or the question here is whether or not Germans were drawn to anti-Semitism. So what that means is we already know that Germany targets the Jewish people, anti-Semitism, hatred toward the Jewish people. So the question here is, were the Germans drawn to anti-Semitism because they were drawn to Nazis, or was it the other way around? So what that means is we already know the German end result, World War II, is what they're going to do to the Jewish people. The question here is whether the Germans were drawn to the hatred of the Jewish people because of the Nazis, or did they already have that hatred prior to the Nazis? Keep in mind, the definition of fascism is really about doing what you have to do for the betterment of the nation. I don't necessarily believe that anti-Semitism is a component of fascism. It just so happens that the Nazis were able to make it such. Another thing you want to focus on is the pyramid of hate. That definitely will be on this test here. I don't know what's going to come up here. There you go. Pyramid of hate. I've used this before, so I'm really not going to address anything additional. There will be intentionalist cumulative. So you definitely want to know the difference between the intentionalist cumulative debate. Anything that seems to be, let's use the word intent. Let's go to genocide in Germany. This was a little bit about the Wannsee conference. I'm using this sheet here. So the fact that the Nazis sat down and coordinated a meeting is enough to suggest that they clearly had a plan with clear intent to target the Jewish people. And I can't argue that what happens to any of the groups targeted by the Nazis was anything but intentionalist. It all seems to be cumulative. You also want to take note of the timeline A to B, what's happening to the Jewish people. We want to focus on them being German citizens, the Nuremberg laws taking that away, the Night of Broken Glass, Einsatzgruppen, this part right here, as well as the part placed in ghettos. Keep in mind, as World War II takes place, Germany gets more land and they get more Jewish people, and that is going to increase their population. Let's not forget about the Potsdam Declaration. That was the last day for the end of the war. And then we also have the biology for middle school, which was also on the quiz. So that is this particular reading here. So we want to focus on the section highlighted in pink, and you'll be asked a series of questions. Appeasement, as far as Churchill and Chamberlain, let's see, as well as the difference between eugenics, euthanasia, and sterilization. I think that's it for this particular test. Good luck.